How are you, Sandy?
I'm amazing. Thank you. I choose to be amazing, so I am.
Exactly. And it is that easy, isn't it? Well, hi, everyone. I'm here with Sandra Grant. What would you like me to call you today, seeing you're my pal?
You can call me Sandy.
Thank you. Now, let me just give you a bit of a background to my friend, my fellow co-author, my confidant. Okay. Sandy comes from a corporate background in finance and systems, and she draws on over 28 years experience as a teacher, trainer, coach, mentor. She enjoys water polo and has played that at international levels. Professionally has danced. She's pretty good at the tango, I hear. And through her own personal hardships, she's chosen very consciously to empower others to live a life of infinite possibilities. Would you like to add any more to that amazing introduction, Sandra? Sandy.
No, thank you so much. You did a great job. Um, I'm so glad that it's a little bit cooler today. We've had very hot weather over the weekend. It got to 41 degrees Celsius, which is 105 Fahrenheit. So
Wow.
at least I'm not melting.
Well, that's good. Our weather just fluctuates so much in Melbourne, which you know, so we don't know what we're going to get, but that's great. It's just like my life. We don't know what's going to show up, but it's all fine.
Exactly.
So I love reading about your vision, and I know we're here because we've co-authored a book called Your True Power. And if anyone's interested in purchasing that or they haven't purchased it yet, you can go to yourtruepowerbook.com and we'll leave a link below. We're aiming for US Today best we can get. Number one on that list. So we've already gone international and we've been bestseller in about at least 3 to 7 countries, isn't it? We've rated very highly in up to 7 countries, including India, Canada, anyway, and Australia, of course.
Of course. We were the first.
We did. We hit number 1 first, and we're so thrilled. Today, we're going to discuss your own internal GPS system and how that guides you through life and how you can access it. And Sandy actually chose this topic. And how do you see this relating to your life in the past and now? And how is that different, your internal GPS?
Okay, so maybe I should start by saying what I mean by your internal GPS. So GPS is a type of a guidance system. And for me, it's a connection to a higher power source, something greater than myself, but also perhaps my intuition. And I believe they're all connected. So I just take whatever guidance I get and I can choose whether to follow it or not. So if you liken it to the car, if you've had a GPS system, it's monitoring where you are, it's monitoring what's happening around you. It may give you alerts about what's coming up. You know, perhaps there's a speed trap or traffic lights.
Usually for me, it's a red light camera.
Yes, that's what I was trying to think. What's it called? Thank you. And it may also be, diverting you because of traffic. But it was interesting. I was in a friend's car the other day, and this thing was beeping away. And because I was unfamiliar with her particular car and system, I was like, "Is that your phone system coming through?" She said, "Oh, that's my GPS. I don't even notice the signals anymore." And I was like, "That's useful." So any sort of guidance system, whether it's your own intuition or your connection to something greater, is only useful if you pay attention to it. And I like to think of it as we're constantly an antenna. We're broadcasting thoughts, feelings, emotions, but we're also receiving those through thoughts, feelings, emotions. And then we have our 5 senses. So if you think about it, we're getting signs all around us all the time. You've probably noticed that yourself.
Yeah. And your whole life around you is a sign. It's a guidance as to how you're going in life. So it's greater than just, you know, a black cat passing you on the path or crossing in front of you. And it's, you know, much greater than, you know, we just live in awe and wonder, don't we, at what's presented in front of us. And when you can use that all as a gauge, it's an incredible tool. And how has that shown up? I know you've had, when you've been choosing, oh, you know, deciding, should I do that course or not? And then you get like this big sign literally in front of you. Can you tell us one of those stories?
All right, I'll tell you the biggest story of that. That was when I first met you. Back in 2016, and we were both doing this 4-day training course, personal development, and they offered further coaching.
Yeah.
And it was quite it was quite a reasonable investment, and it involved travel overseas, and it was a whole year course. And it was like, we were discussing it over lunch, and someone said, are you going to do it? I was like, no, I'm not doing it. But I had been in the habit of doing morning writing. And if you're not familiar with it, that comes from Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way, where one of the exercises was to do write down a stream of consciousness. That means whatever comes into your head without thinking about it, without judging it, first thing in the morning. And it might be just for 5 minutes. So I got into this habit over the years. And in my morning writing, the day after this offer had been made, it was saying, go, go, go. And I was like, oh, it seems like you want me to do this coaching course. But I need a sign, because you know, in my writing is not enough. And we were staying at a hotel across the road from the beach at Mooloolaba, and I was in the habit of doing a long walk along the beach. And as I was walking back, just about to go back to the hotel, there was this huge banner, flag type thing on a pole, and it said, enroll now. I was like, okay, that's a sign.
First there was the go, 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 and if you're not getting it, enroll now. So we love those signs. And if you want to, anybody listening, you can ask for a sign. Don't forget to ask for what you want. If you're clearer in knowing what you want, or even if you're like Sandy, undecided, ask for a sign and you will receive. So keep your eye out, stay aware and awake to the signs, and you will be shown the way. You will be guided. It might seem a little bit corny at first, but then you eventually get used to just reading the subtle signs and the not so subtle signs. And it's so much fun, isn't it? Seeing these incredible things just appear before you and you're like, oh, okay. Now, do you think that was happening around you earlier on, but you just didn't notice?
Oh, I had been aware of signs for some time. I mean, that's probably why I asked for a sign. I first read Denise Linn's book, Signposts, and that really woke me up to the possibilities. So she said there are signs everywhere. She was part Cherokee Indian. And are you familiar with her?
No, I've heard you talk about it though.
Oh, okay, right. Sorry to repeat, but for the listeners.
No. No, this is many years ago.
Yeah, and she said that you're going to be surrounded by signs, and it might be visual, it might be sound. So if it's a visual, you might see a billboard or an ad on a truck going past or something like that, or your attention's drawn to something. For me, quite often it happens to be number plates, and I will be drawn to a number plate while I'm driving along, or else a car might even swerve in front of me just to get my attention. And I look at the number plate and it relates, say, to my dad's previous car, my dad's past. And so I just say, oh, hi, Dad, you know. Yeah. But in terms of visual, obviously the sign enroll now is one major example, but you might overhear somebody's conversation. It might be the lyrics of a song that comes into your head, or that you just happens to come on, and you even though you've heard that song 100 times before, you might just be drawn to particular lyrics. And then it can be a smell. So for me, I will get the smell of gardenias, and I know that's my grandmother around, because she grew gardenias. And I might not even be anywhere where flowers are growing. I might even be indoors. So it can come in various ways. And the funniest one with sound was with my smoke detector. And
a very pleasant sound, not.
No, but it was interesting because normally if the battery's running down, it'll make some sort of sounds like a bird or something like that. But mine decided it was going to give me a code. So it went beep, 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 beep. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I was like, okay, you've got my attention. And then it's tuning into, you know, why have I been drawn to that? What was I thinking about? What was happening, recently that I should be paying attention to something? And once you acknowledge, or at least fortunately with the smoke detector, once I acknowledged that, it stopped doing that. And I told it off. I said, yes, I've got the message, thank you.
And numbers too. Numbers are a good one. For me, it's always 111, 1111, 1122, 33, 44, and yeah. I've lived at number 11, and at 5's another one. So I've lived at nearly every multiple of 11. And it's just crazy. It just shows up all the time. And you look at your phone and you're like, oh, it's 111. Funny enough. And you're like, yeah, what was I thinking and wondering and concerned about at that time? And I always take it as a positive sort of sign. So, I need to either dwell on that a bit longer, or yes, it's a yes, Yeah. How, I was going to say, how do you share that knowledge with people? Do you, when you see your clients, alert them to that? Are they often aware of the signs and their internal GPS, or do they need you to sort of open them a little bit more to that understanding and avail them to, what's on offer?
So it varies, from person to person, obviously, because some of them think I'm a bit out there with some of my comments. But when I actually say to them, are you intuitive? They look at me, even if they're very, what you might call conservative and academic or something like that, they'll look at me and it's like, oh yeah, I think so. And then it's more making them aware of what's already around them that they've noticed but they haven't really consciously paid attention to.
Okay. I remember a story, and it sort of stuck with me, from our coaching, and a lady, had ended up quite ill, and it's also happened a couple of times in my life, and I've heard this story. So the universe often will be whispering to you. And then if you're, too busy and cluttered and you're not, available to fully listen and you don't hear it, it then goes to giving you a car accident. I was like, well, that's a great big step up. And then if you don't pay attention and change things dramatically from that point, it affects your body and you get sick, or, it shows up as an illness some way in your body. And I always think, gee, we better pay attention a little bit earlier. I remember I once drove out my driveway and went straight into a side of a car, and I went, oh, okay. I mean, I didn't even see them there, and they were right in front of me. And so I was like, okay, I'm making that big change I was debating about, and I did it and haven't looked back. But I wasn't waiting for it to infect my body.
Well, I had a similar story with my dad. And he was not one for all of this, woo-woo stuff. And we just didn't talk about these things. But I could see it happening. He had a minor car accident, like literally reversing out of a parking space in the shopping centre car park. And then there was something else, and then there was something else. And then he fell and broke his knee, but that didn't slow him down or stop him. And I mean, he was almost 80 at the time, mid-70s, say. And anyhow, it went on with these series of accidents where he had broken his knee. He was on crutches, but he wasn't strong enough to actually put the weight of himself on there. So as he was getting out of bed, because he wasn't going to use those, he falls and he hits the side of his ear on the corner of the dressing table because he wasn't listening to the signs.
That's what I was just about to say. It quite often refers to what's going on, quite literally.
Yes.
That's a classic example. The same thing happened to my daughter. She didn't like hearing the arguing in the household, so she made herself deaf, literally.
Right.
And it was a massive wake-up call. Her ears became blocked, and I would stand beside her and say, she'd be horrified at this story if she could remember, you know, if she sees this and remembers. And I'd say, Layla, and she's right beside me and she couldn't hear me. And I was like, oh, okay. She hated loud noises, arguing, any sharp, loud, you know, spikes in what you had to say, and she would cry and cower. And if she heard an argument, that was the worst thing ever. And she's very in tune, that girl. And so I was just like, oh my goodness. And then it makes you wake up if you're aware of the signs as well.
Wow.
So yeah, that was a bit of a scary moment.
And that's a reflection back to you, because what's happening around you is a reflection of what you're creating, co-creating.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, sometimes it can be someone else's stuff and you just observe it. But if you ask, is that a sign for me? You can, it's almost, with practice, it almost becomes automatic that you know when it is, because of the impact it has in your body. And it's like you might have a sudden intake of breath, or your gut might tighten. Have you ever been in a situation, for example, where you go to do something or whatever the situation is, and you can literally feel your gut tightening, or some other part of your body is just tensing up? You had that experience?
Oh, yes. Like when we're about to go on stage.
Yes. And so it's not just external signs, it's also tuning into your own body. And at one point, I was so much in my head, I was so much into thoughts, that I virtually was a body carrying around a head, you know, like a brain, because I was not conscious. And I'd come out with these bruises and things because I would have walked into the edge of the doorway or walked into the corner of the table or something. But I just wasn't in my body. I was more in my head or somewhere else. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And so it really can have a physical impact on you if you're not aware.
And it can be, again, quite literal in the fact that you were getting bruises and you weren't present in your body. So how would you have that awareness as to where the edge of your body is and the external begins? Because you're not even in your body, like you said.
Yeah.
And that happens to a lot of people who just drift off, or they're half somewhere else. People don't notice them in the street. And when they start to wake up, they're like, why does everyone bump into me as I walk down the street? Or why do they not even acknowledge me when I'm at the counter?
Yeah.
And they're getting that on the cusp of beginning to notice what's going on around them. But quite literally, they're so absent that nobody else is even noticing them. And I find that quite amazing.
Well, I think it again is a reflection of their own internal situation, because if you're not noticing yourself, if you're not recognizing aspects of yourself, then why is anyone else going to? And funny story, you know how people say to you, oh, how are you, when they see you? And you know, most people automatically say, oh yeah, I'm fine, or
Good.
or I've got a pain in my big toe, and you know, got to go to the doctors and da da da. Anyhow, I decided to switch that up. It was, you know, along the lines of self-talk and things like that. And I'd just say, I'm fabulous.
Yep. That's what I say. I'm awesome.
Now I've switched it to amazing. And so, but it literally is a pattern interrupt. It stops them in their tracks. And they're like, what? You know, because they're so used to the automatic. And that's what we do. We're choosing to be amazing. We're choosing to be awesome or fabulous or whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas most people aren't even aware of what's coming out of their mouth. They're
Yeah.
just literally in a, press button A and this response comes out.
Yeah. And the exciting thing is for anyone listening is that they can change that up by just making those small adjustments. But you have to be aware and stay present and be very awake to the now, because you'll notice if you're drifting off in your thoughts and you're not staying with your body and with what you're doing, you will quickly drift into automatic mode and someone will say, how are you? Good. Or if you start to complain, they've switched off and left you anyway because they don't want to hear that. So you might as well make a conscious choice. But it's not to delude yourself that you're amazing and you feel like crap. It's literally rewiring you to, I feel amazing. And you smile, you change your body chemistry, you alter your thoughts, and therefore everything is changed in your brain. And it's just repetition and practice, and it becomes a joy. And it does. And it literally changes you to a much happier state. So, it's good to hear us say these things and you think, well, I can't do that. But Sandy's already said some simple and amazing ways that you can become aware of your internal GPS and also act on that to change the automatic. Any other thoughts on that, Sandy? Some other tips?
Well, I just wanted to add a little bit onto that one. The thing is that if you don't think you're amazing, why would anybody else?
Yep.
And, when people press me and say, why are you saying that? It's like, well, this is what I'm aspiring to be. This is my intention. This is what I'm putting out there. And I think that's a good way of looking at it. It's not trying to override something. I'm not resisting something, but I am choosing the state that I would like to be in.
Okay. And then sometimes the opposite happens, doesn't it? When I'm just thinking about, there's a lot of people suffering with mental illness and depression at the moment. And not to take away from how grave that is and what the outlook looks like, because I've completely been there for over 5 years, not now, but in the past. And you're literally living in that doom and gloom. And it's like you're trapped in a fog and you can't find your way out. It's just because you don't know that there's a way out perhaps in the first place, and you've trained your body chemistry to keep recreating that. So every time you wake up or you think of something, you go to that automatic negative, and it's hard to know where to turn without some guidance. So you could begin to look for signs and your internal guidance, but if you're really low, it's a really hard place to come back from. What would you suggest? I know this is a little bit perhaps beyond our training, but I mean, I just had to take it so slowly and decide one day that I'm not taking medication, and I'd been at the stage where I was begging for it because I just couldn't cope. And I just wanted something to dull and numb my feelings. And that, of course, ended up making things worse, not better. Yeah. But if you just decide one day you're done, don't you think you can actually start to build on that a little bit?
Well, there's multiple possibilities, and that's one of them. I don't know whether you know, I was also depressed, and I'm so sensitive to anything chemical, whatever, like mainstream. My dad was a doctor, so I had antidepressants way back when I was at university, and excuse me, and it just had such an impact on me. And especially when I went out, for a party and had a drink as well, it's like knocked me out. And I was like, oh, not going there. Totally out of my control. But in all of my training before we actually met, one of the things that stuck with me was the concept of depression being suppression of emotions. And the analogy was, if you had an inflated beach ball and you're trying to keep it under the water, it takes a bit of energy. And that could represent one emotion. And then you have another major emotion. So you might have fear, for example, or anger as one emotion. And then you have another inflated beach ball and you're trying to hold two of them under the water at the same time. And then what happens, another thing comes along, and all of a sudden what comes is one of those you can't hold on to, and it pops up. And so that's when you might see someone who has an emotional outbreak, that, you know, the anger just wells up or something. And it's not within their control. It's literally that. So now where I look at depression, it's suppression of emotions. And you and I have both done a lot of expression of emotions during our coaching training, because it's covering up the joy and the love and everything that's underneath. And quite often it's tied in with the story. Whatever your story is, or series of stories, what happened to you, it links that to the trauma, the emotion that's stored in your body. And why is it stored in your body? Because you, in a survival mode, you weren't able to deal with it at the time, whatever it was. And so you need to be in a safe space to be able to finally release those emotions. And sometimes, yes, you need help, and sometimes it can be automatic. And this is a parallel story. It's not as serious as mental health. But I had an addiction to chocolate, and I could literally eat a family bar of chocolate every day by myself, one go, not, you know, spread out through the day. And one day and it was an addiction. It's like, you know, if I didn't have it, I had to go and find it, and it had to be, you know, relatively dark chocolate. But it was only probably 70% at the time. And one day I just said, if you don't want me to eat this chocolate, you need to take away the craving. And it went instantly.
Wow.
So I went a year without eating chocolate. Now I eat, you know, 90% sort of chocolate occasionally, and I enjoy it, but I'm not addicted to it. You know, I've gone long periods without it, not thinking about it. So it's very much when you decide, when you make a firm stand that this is what you want, and you ask for help. I mean, ask for help for whatever. I mean, I wasn't talking to anyone. I just said it out loud. So whatever the response was, you know, the source, the universe, God, the higher power, the body listening to it, whatever it was, it responded.
That's amazing. I've heard that, you know, that craving with chocolate is addicted to, you know, is an addiction, obviously, but it's akin to the love you're searching for. And I was just wondering if, you know, that was also running in parallel, because I know just through what I've witnessed with people that, yeah, that addiction and that the endorphin rush and that beautiful feeling that comes after you participate in these addictive, either, you know, rituals or, you know, the things you do to yourself. It could be tattooing you're addicted to and all that. And you get that rush and that endorphin rush and release, that it's like if you're paying attention, it's you calling out for love, really, and the need to give that to yourself and to receive it also. And was that also running parallel at the time?
I'm not aware of that aspect, particularly at that time. I know that chocolate has been linked with depression, because whatever's in the chocolate is, you know, what your body needs in a chemical sense or similar.
Yeah.
But certainly when you're looking for love, you're not going to find it if you don't love yourself. You can't find it outside of yourself. And it's even hard for someone to say, you know, to love themselves. I didn't grow up with a family that said I love you or anything like that. And you probably remember one of the tools that we got through our coaching was to look in the mirror and say, I love you.
Yeah.
And it took me the longest time even to be able to say that to myself with no one else around, but to say it aloud, I love you.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually to progress from that, you know, and it's as much not taking in the judgment, not looking at yourself and go, oh, you know, look at this spot or these wrinkles or this, you know, my hair or something. Eventually I got to the point where I could do it in a full length mirror and not judge the bumps and the lumps and the whatever in the body, and just say, I love you. And it's not a, how how can you say it's not over the top in the sense of, oh, I love myself, you know, it's not that. It's genuine seeing and accepting and not judging what you're seeing. And when you can do that for yourself, then you're open to do it for somebody else. You're open to be able to receive love from someone else as well as to give it.
Yeah. And I also tell people, like, not tell people, but alert them to the fact that if there is something and, you know, it's really bugging them about themselves, or they don't like the way, there's someone in mind when I'm saying this, that I have someone, they always ask for my guidance, but they're actually not willing to make a change. But there's something that they really don't like about themselves, and it keeps cropping up. So that I know she can't actually do that exercise because she doesn't love herself, because there is that little part that she doesn't love about herself. So that does make it, I mean, we found it difficult enough. And yet we had released a lot of stuff, and we were willing to make changes so that we could fully embrace all parts of ourselves. But it is difficult for some people who acknowledge and then choose not to, you know, move forward with that, and that's fine as well. But when they keep coming back to you for for guidance and help, you know, you just have to keep nurturing them along. But once you realize and know that you are this amazing infinite being with so many possibilities, and the whole world and so much joy is available to you, and, you know, you can do what you love and choose consciously, then yes, you can stand in front of the mirror and stand before other people and present yourself as this amazing being you are, because it's just a wonder and an awe, and you need to acknowledge that. That's an incredible achievement. This is you manifest in physical form. That's incredible. If something really bugs you, you can choose to change it and then love yourself even more.
And it reminds me of a few people that I've known in the past who didn't like some aspect of themselves. And it wasn't that physical aspect as much as they put the story of not feeling not loved into that part of their body. Basically, that was the representation of it. And for example, somebody who felt that their mother didn't want them, you know, that they were a mistake, or that whatever. It was that type of thing. And it's the story that they hang on to, or they don't even consciously realize, but they've put it into this part of their body. Or the other alternative is that someone said something, and they've held on to that comment, that judgment.
Yeah. You just do, you keep perpetuating that, and then that's the lens with which you look at everything, and it's so debilitating to your life, because everything that anyone's ever said to you, you've taken on board and either believed or had, you know, a really strong awareness of, and you're living your life through that lens. And that's where us coaches come in. You know, we do have a little bit of experience, and if anybody listening, you know, wants to work further with myself or Sandy, I know she's really good at just honing in on the issue, and I've had many sessions with her, and we've just sat down and she's just gone straight for the jugular.
Thanks, Dionnie. She means that in the nicest possible way, that I'm holding the space, that it, being very intuitive or whatever it is, that it's like if you see a typo on the page, it jumps out at me. It's like got
that's
lights going. This is it.
No, it's only because you're so good at recognizing it, and you're always reading the client. Anybody who's in a pool of tears, you're not going to throw them the major thing that, you know, that they need to notice straight away. You're going to be very good at nurturing and calming and, you know, reading that person. But you knew I could take it, so you just told me the issue straight out. And I think that's important as well. If you know your client and you know how they operate, and I'm just like blunt as, then yes, I can take it. That's the problem. You know, that's where there's an issue. And you know, I need to work on myself always. Whenever something goes wrong, it's never for me about the other person or anybody else, because there's only really me. It sounds selfish, but it's just me. And then it's a reflection of me and my thoughts around me. It's never about anybody else around you. So if you can, get over your ego and realize that everything is just a gauge and a calibration and a sign as to where you're traveling in your consciousness, then you can really elevate yourself, or you can choose to ignore it, and the choice is yours. So Sandy, any other great thoughts about how we can better follow our internal GPS?
Well, funny you should ask, because I just had this thought just before you asked the question, and that is to pay attention to your dreams. And I've done some dream work courses and part of groups and things like that. And one dream in particular, I remember someone sharing, was about being blocked. It was like they were going down a particular road, and then they'd be cut off at that end, and then they would be cut off some other way. Mm-hmm. And it was like obviously telling them, you need to choose a different path. So it doesn't matter the details of it, but listen to your dreams. They may be symbolic, and they may just be a rehash of what's been happening in the day, but notice what you notice. And I would suggest to people that you have a journal and a pen beside your bed, so that first thing, because you're going to lose this dream very quickly, write a title, write a few words. How does it relate to your life? And it might not be obvious in one dream. It might not be obvious, for a while. But that's part of how my guidance system has come through as well, is it's just noticing what stands out for you. And the other day for me, it was just honey. And it's like, oh, okay, maybe my body needs to have some honey. Let's do that. It can be very, very simple, or very change your life type stuff.
Yeah.
That sign was when
Did you eat
about enrolled now.
Did you go and eat some honey or put it in your tea?
I did. I had a big spoonful of honey, and that was it. And it was fine. I didn't question it. I didn't analyze it. It's like, okay, if that's all I can remember, then obviously I'm meant to have it. So that's part of the dream is to take action, whether you draw about it, or you reflect on it, or you talk about it to someone else.
I love that, because eventually you start not questioning it. Like you said, you're just like, okay, that's what I'm doing. And I was going to say, that's just such a freedom, because when you're just open to that, it's so exciting, because life becomes a whole adventure. It's like you're being told something, or just something just drops in, and a knowing drops in, and you're like, oh, I have to share that, or I have to go there, or I have to do that, or I have to eat that, or I have to avoid that. And when you really do pay attention, your body is constantly communicating with you, as are your surroundings. And I just feel like it's all one big antenna. We're all this, interconnected. Well, we all are beginning to get on board with this concept around the world of, a complete united energy field, the matrix, and everything. And of course, this fascinates all of us. And, you're just one big antenna, really. So you might as well pay attention. It just makes things so freeing, because you're not trying to control things. That's what it's meant by going with the flow and allowing yourself to be led. And it takes all the pressure off you. You're not striving for anything. You're not trying your hardest. You're not hoping, wishing, praying. You're just going with the flow, and it is a freeing sensation. So I'd be starting to pay attention. Listen to Sandy.
Well, a couple of things on what you just said. When you're going with the flow, you're not trying to control, which means you're not in fear. And fear is the opposite to love. Love is more expansive. So that's one reason for going with the flow and having a more expansive thing. And that's why Dionnie knows that my favorite expression is infinite possibilities, because it's expanding. And what I mean by that is, I could be stuck in traffic and the lights aren't changing, or it just seems like a car park. And I'll just say infinite possibilities, infinite possibilities, infinite possibilities. And then all of a sudden, it's all in flow. And you do it often enough, you you're not attached to the outcome, but it just happens.
And maintaining that, as Abraham Hicks always says, she's just such an inspiring speaker.
Yeah.
And I remember in my early days, 7 years ago or so, of just starting to question things and question my life and notice what was going on around me, that her most important saying is to, protect your vibration, protect your state of being, because then you're even more open to these signs. When you are depressed, or when you are negative, or when you're just busy doing all your work and stressing out and in a panic, you don't hear those subtle things. And eventually, they'll be screaming at you, but it'll be in a way that you really would prefer they wouldn't be, like as a disease or something like that. So let's start to tune in and really listen. Anybody listening, I'm sure you already know everything you need to know. So be open to those signs, and it's just going to lead you in amazing and magical directions with infinite possibilities, Sandy.
Just one more thing that I think people should be aware of is, because we are these giant antennas of everything that's going on in the world, just like a TV is broadcasting and radio is broadcasting and everything else, it's not always our thoughts that we're thinking. We're aware of them. And you need to ask yourself, is this my thought? Is this my feeling? Is this my emotion? And is this my pain? And the pain one is particularly relevant for me, because you might wake up and you've got, a pain, sore throat or something like that. And I would go, oh, I've got a sore throat, I need to do to stop it getting worse or whatever. Now I just go, that's not mine, take it away. I don't want it. And invariably it just goes. So that was the last insight for me, I think, in terms of taking on other people's stuff. It was like, I was aware if I'd walked into a room and someone had a headache that I would feel it. But that's the blessing and the curse of being an empath, is that you feel this stuff. But when it's a body thing, you think that it's yours, and it may not be. So just ask, is this mine? And if you don't want it anyhow, just say, take it away.
Even if it is yours, just say, I am getting out of bed. I'm not going to listen to that voice that says, you can't do it, you can't get out, you're going to skip your class today, you're going to skip that meal, you're going to skip that catch up. Sometimes in order to create that change, you have to just make a change. I mean, not sometimes, always, you have to make a change. So if you wake up with a sore throat and you're just like, you know what, I'm not going there today. You tried that last week. No, I'm not. I'm going to change, and I'm doing something different. It doesn't mean you just ignore symptoms or anything like that. We're not doctors, but it just means that you can actually choose. And a lot of the time you can choose to feel better. You can choose not to say, I'm tired, I'm cranky, I'm angry, and, choose something else. And I think that's an important reflection on how magical we are, isn't it, Sandy?
Yes. I mean, if there is anger and it needs to come out, it may be because you resonate with somebody else's anger, because you've got that unhealed wound still in there, the scars of some past trauma or something like that. So if you do feel an emotion, let it out. But if it's something else, it's like, do I choose that? Or I wonder how I could feel better. I wonder, how I could be more healthy. I wonder what else is possible. And that's leading into that infinite possibilities.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. It's just so exciting, the possibilities that do exist for us when we all awaken. And I keep saying, this mass awakening that's happening right now, it's just such an exciting time to be alive. And I'm so thankful. And I'm so thankful to you for joining me today, for speaking to your and my general audience. And then when we post this on YouTube, perhaps reaching some more people who are inspired to learn more about themselves and even be coached or guided along to greater awareness and infinite possibilities. Is there anything you'd like to finish up with, Sandy?
Well, just a reminder, in case people haven't bought the book, Your True Power, The Key to Your Amazing Life. 14 true transformational stories, including Dionnie's and mine, and 14 bonuses, one from each of the authors, the chance to win $1,000 in a free raffle. All the money from the sales is going to charity. But I wonder how many people we can help through our stories. I wonder how widespread the impact of us being vulnerable, of choosing to be part of this project. I wonder how widespread the impact of that, like the ripples in the pond. And I wonder how it's going to be shared in the widest possible way.
There we go. And that's how you phrase it, guys. I wonder how all this could be brought to us and more. And I wonder how we can just spread that joy and that knowing throughout the entire universe so that we can all benefit and rise together. And what an amazing world, you know, is possible for all of us when we're all operating in a higher capacity than what we are now, being awake and present. Wow, what can we all do? We won't need so many rules and regulations, will we? Yeah, because we'll all want to be doing the best thing for ourselves and it'll be in everybody else's best interest too. So we're going to leave you with a link below to these amazing stories, because what better way to express yourself than through stories that, you know, humans have done for thousands of years with each other. And, you know, they've told tales, they've, you know, shown great adventures and fighting and heroic events and their trials and tribulations. And yeah, storytelling is just such a beautiful way to share your knowledge without, you know, pushing it at people, but just explaining that, you know, this could be an inspiration for you. You know, Sandy has had incredible upbringing as well that has helped, you know, make her the person she is today. So there's nothing wrong with anything you're going through. You're just using your experiences to grow and gain a better understanding of life and just be here and enjoy yourselves. And we all, you know, wish that for everybody, a greater life, a greater understanding of themselves, and to treat yourselves with care and kindness that you deserve. And the infinite love you are will then be expressed to the whole world. And we're just so thrilled to share our stories, aren't we, Sandy?
We are. And I just want to say thank you so much for interviewing me, for having me as your guest. And it's been fun.
It's so fun. We love it. And we all tell stories every time we all get together. So it's beautiful. So thank you so much, everybody. We will leave you that link to how to reach us and how to buy our book and support this amazing movement. Thank you so much, Sandy. See you soon.
Bye, everybody.